beautiful boyfriend Phainon will deliver your enemies to the afterlife. And today I'm gonna tell you how to build him best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Just look at this man, a soft, beautiful warrior of Aedes Elysiae. Obviously, he only deserves the absolute best in terms of his gear, so what does this lad want? 4 pieces wise, Wave Striding Captain and Scholar Lost in Erudition are your best choices. They both work excellently with Phainon's kit. Scholar actually ends up being competitive with Wave Striding, because basically all of his cutie patootie of Aedes Elysiae's damage output is stored within his skill, but Wave Strider doesn't buff him outside of his ultimate, so you don't get that boost to the initial skills you have to use on Phainon to gather up core flames. Wave Strider's buffs expire after 1 turn, which in our sweet destructive Marshmallow's case, ends after he uses his Gigantosaurus ult finisher. So, his regular skills aren't benefiting from Wave Strider. However, you don't overcap on crit rate as fast with this set. Plus, it still remains his best in slot even in spite of this. And besides, the buffs to skill damage from Scholar only apply to Phainon's first Meteorite Blast, since it doesn't have a turn duration. The buff will simply expire after his first Meteor Strike. However, Phainon already gives himself so much attack, resulting in Wave Strider's buffs being slightly diminishing, though I recommend farming Wave Strider over using Scholar, as it remains his best in slot either way, but the latter is still perfectly viable for him. Streetwise boxing works too, but the aforementioned sets are better suited to our adorable knight in shining armor. In terms of 2 pieces, you want to go for Arcadia or Rudolent Arena. Arcadia tends to his ult kicking everybody else off field, and leaving him as the sole party member present, and Rudolent Arena boosts skill damage, which is almost the entirety of our Deliverer's damage output. They'll easily serve as your best choices. It should also be stated that Bone Collection's passive actually buffs Phainon when he enters his ult state and gains an insane amount of HP, so it unironically ends up being viable for him, though it does fall far behind the other picks. This same principle applies to other sets that buff based on stats, which sadly rules out sets such as Glomoth being effective because he nerfs his own speed during his ult. So he doesn't meet the stat thresholds for these sets. He reduces his own speed by 60% of his base when he ults, so anything like that isn't gonna work. Our cutie Deliverer's main stats are pretty simple. Go for these. You want to reach at least 136 speed on Phainon, so that the other 2 action advanced supports can help boost him up consecutively. What I mean by that is that you want 155 speed on one and 134 speed on the other. That way, you end up with a turn order that looks like this. And that allows you to generate core flames very quickly. You get those from either using Phainon's skill, or from him receiving buffs. For such a sweet guy, that's pretty selfish, huh? Otherwise, if you're able to reach enough speed substats, or if you have effective speed buffing happening in your team, such as E2 Bronya, then you can run attack boots instead to benefit your damage output. In terms of stat goals, you ideally want to reach this scenario. Like I said before, you want a particular amount of speed so that you can regenerate his ult core flames quickly. His signature light cone doesn't give him any crit rate or damage, so the crit requirements don't change between using a 5-star or 4-star light cone. However, I will say, if you're specifically using a light cone that gives him a bit more crit rate, such as the new Mighty Cone, then you can get away with running a little bit less crit rate. But you ideally want to have 100% after teammate buffs, or get as close to that as possible. Farm up Wave Strider when you can, but otherwise, Scholar's a more than suitable alternative for the time being. What a beautiful day. The sun is chirping, birds are shining, and on days like this, enemies of Phainon should be burning in destruction's wrath. But you're gonna need good light cones in order to exert said destruction. What'll those be then? Alright, we can start by getting the obvious out of the way. His signature light cone is fantastic on him. He gains more base speed, which improves his action value situation, considering that his ult takes up so much of it. He also literally gains Death Ignore and deals 60% more damage to the enemy while gaining an absurd amount of base attack, which helps when you consider that his own base attack isn't actually that high. Fantastic light cone for him, obviously, and he looks gorgeous in the artwork of course. My guy is not beating the mighty fanboy allegations, considering that his second best in slot is literally a lore light cone for Mighty that shows some of his past. Don't worry, number 1 Mighty Simp, as the number 2 Mighty Simp myself, second to only you, I get it. He gets some crit rate, and his skill damage gains benefits too. And yes, this cone works on Mighty too. Phainon is very normal about Mighty, yep. But yeah, this is a good light cone for him. Fall of an Eon is going to be your free-to-play option. It does the job just fine, and is better than any other cone that isn't as well tailored to his kit. It just offers some 5-star base stats, and attack percent in the passive. All in all, a great light cone option. Those are going to be your main choices, since there's no real point in choosing a light cone that's below the free-to-play friendly Fall of an Eon. I would like to say, yes, other destruction cone stat sticks will work fine, but there's no real reason to turn to those when more accessible options perform more favorably. who's gonna want to help out our nuclearly powerful Scruggly Scrimblow in battle? Well, Phainon's interesting, because the way that he works is that you want to apply a ton of buffs to him, and then use his ultimate after buffing him up fully. This is because during his ult state, he will retain every single buff that was applied to him before then. Very important note, you want to use his ult right on his turn, not before then, so all the buffs can register. For example, if you use Bronya's ultimate, but use Phainon's ult before his turn starts, you won't get the Bronya ult buff. So waiting until his turn would be playing it safe. And he literally kicks aside the rest of your party to remain as the sole man standing after his ult, meaning that he's the definition of a selfish DPS. So sadly, this means that for any of us that dreamed of doing boyfriend dual carry, we unfortunately won't be able to. However, what this does mean is that we can easily take advantage of hyper carry supports. His best assault team core will be of Sunday and Bronya. You want those two to be at 135 to 134 speed respectively to achieve the turn order that I mentioned earlier. This will easily allow you to form core flames and obtain a ton of useful buffs. Phainon also gains plenty of crit rate this way via Sunday's presence. Plus, it's also nice that he just looks super freaking beautiful with the halo around his head. Man, Phainon is just beautiful in general. Friendly reminder to treat your Phainon with love and care. He deserves it, man. That aside, you can also consider other action advancers such as Sparkle and Robin if you don't have access to the two characters that I just mentioned. He does have a unique synergy with Cypher. Essentially, even when Phainon's the only guy on field, Cypher is still generating stacks whenever he gets hit. So even though it may seem odd, it's actually pretty good in single target scenarios. She's still able to increase the damage that enemies take, which is excellent. Remembrance MC gets the job done brilliantly too. Crit damage and true damage buffs. Great free to play advanced support for the guy. Tribute will work as well, thanks to your res penetration offerings. Ruanmei works well for said reasons too. And it should also be said that if you're someone with an E1, S1 Ruanmei, but all of your other potential supports are at E0, S0, you'd actually rather use Ruanmei over them. If you're just starting out, Ruanmei is still free in the Light Cone shop, and Bronya is a standard character. You're likely going to want to use those two together in the same team if you're interested in playing a solo team with them early on. Any basic sustain is going to work just fine, but to be honest, Phainon's one of the easiest characters to play sustainless in the entire game. This is because he grants himself a ridiculous amount of HP, and he becomes a one-man army during his ult. So because he's such a selfish DPS, you can also consider running a triple support setup, because that will actually be viable for the guy. I will add though, since his A4 lets him convert energy into core flame generation, Huohuo's ult will be able to offer him one core flame per ult cast. So hey, that's pretty neat. I will say, you do want at least one action advanced support in the team ideally. Bronya's the cheap pick, you can even go for RMC instead, and Sparkle works fine too, but Sunday would be ideal. Example teams include the Deliverer, Sunday, Bronya, RMC, Mighty's Boyfriend, Bronya or RMC, Ruanmei, Sustain, Kiryu, Sunday, Cypher, Sustain. You get the idea. Yet how does our lovely Deer of Aedes Elysiae work? Well, his regular unenhanced basic attack deals one simple physical strike. Cool, okay. As for his unenhanced skill, he'll deal physical blast damage and give himself 2 stacks of core flame. Also, just listen to that sound design, man. To explain what that is, we should talk about his unenhanced talent. This stores his core flames, which serve as a special ult energy, which can trigger his sicko mode transformation. You need 12 to cast his sicko mode, but he can store 3 excess points at a time. He'll also gain a crit buff when his teammates buff him. He gains 1 core flame from being buffed, and 2 from using his own skill. Alright, that's enough. Time to go sicko mode. Now that we're looking as menacing as ever, let's discuss his sicko mode traces. Basically, he has these points called Scourge, and you want at least 4 in order to cast his nuclear meteorites. His basic attack will give him 2 Scourge, and deal some blast damage. It's better for single target scenarios. His counterattack will advance enemies forward, and he'll deal more damage with the more times that he gets attacked. He generates Scourge based on how many enemies he hits. This is a more AoE-centric ability. His meteorites will consume 4 Scourge points, and literally nuke every living being within his vicinity. Dude could nuke an entire universe if he wanted to with this level of power. I swear. You get the idea. Humongous physical damage to every on-field enemy. Then the ult itself. This is what turns our cute marshmallow into a toasted crispy marshmallow, and he deploys a territory which deletes all of your other teammates until his large singular turn is finished. He has 8 turns at 60% of his base speed, and he still remains as being as handsome as ever. His enhanced talent houses all of his additional abilities, increases his crowd control resistance, and increases his attack and max HP by a chunky amount. He also restores 20% of his own max HP after attacking, so my guy is literally a one-man army out here, and he can't die from a killing blow. Instead, he regens 25% of his HP, and then immediately deals his final hit. And that final hit will deal reduced damage for every turn that he still had left in his sicko form, and when his initial transformation ends, everyone's speed increases by 50% for 1 turn. And that final hit, oh boy. Essentially, whenever you reach the end of his turns during his transformation state, he will launch one insane looking finisher move, and deal a ludicrously awesome amount of damage. When it comes to his technique, he increases max technique points in the team by 3, he consumes 2 technique points per tech cast, and will delete all regular enemies instantly. If he enters battle afterwards, he regens 25 energy for all allies, and gains 2 Scourge stacks and 1 skill point. He also deals physical damage equal to 200% of his own attack to all enemies at the start of each wave, a fantastic technique that is quite literally the whole package. Our Pretty Lad's Ascension passives are fairly straightforward. His A2 will give him 1 point of Core Flame when the battle starts, and when his first transformation ends, he will instantly get 3 Core Flames to make getting his second ult faster. Nice. His A4 converts energy into Core Flames, and any shielding or healing he receives into damage dealt increase. But I'd like to add that running Sustainless will still typically be stronger. Great A4. Then the guy can literally give himself up to 100% more attack via his A6. The dude is just packed with stats, man. As for Phainon's trace priority, simple. Go for this. His kit glazes his skills so freaking much, and all of his ability scalings are there, so make sure you level it up first, and give it plenty of attention levels-wise. His ult finisher scales on his ult, so you want to level that next, since that also does an absurd amount of damage. His basic attack is better in single target, or when you don't want to advance enemies forward with his counter, so leveling up his basic is actually worthwhile. His talent is great too, considering the self buffs that it provides. I'd level it up well, even if it's the lowest on the priority list. All of his traces are valuable, to be honest. It's unwise to neglect any of them, but this should help out with prioritizing his resources. Phainon is literally the most beautiful man in the entire Hoyoverse. I couldn't blame you for wanting to dump all of your jades as an offering to this angel of a man. So let's talk Eidolons. He inherits more base speed when using his ult now, and he inherits more as you defeat more enemies. You also get more crit damage, which is just a straight up damage increase. Very nice E1, helps with speeding up his ult and providing better action value. Our precious Knight's E2 will have the guy increasing his physical res pen by 20%. He also gains an extra freaking turn within his ult state after consuming 4 Scourge points. Very strong E2, bolsters his overall output by a pretty noticeable amount. This just upgrades his ult in basic. Nice but not crazy. He immediately gains 4 counter stacks when you use his counter. This is a big deal, because this is Phainon's counter assuming that you've been hit 4 more times than you actually have, thus increasing the damage it deals. Very nice. Improves its performance in AoE even further. +2 to his skill and talent is insane. Mostly his skill. That's where the majority of his damage output lies. And hoo boy, is that one meaty increase. Brilliant D5. It upgrades some of the core components of his kit after all. Hilarity. Anyways, this uncaps his core flame limit, and gives him 6 right when he starts into a battle, while also giving him a bunch of additional true damage on his meteorite to the enemy with the highest HP. This deals some diabolical damage. Damage that's almost as diabolical as Phainon himself, if you know what I mean. And is definitely a strong E6, but nothing that you need. He's a modest man. He'll get by just fine down at E0, but if you're a whale looking to E6 at DPS, then yes, this lovely husbando's a good option. Investment-wise, I'd try get a signature Lycombe first, then pick up E2 if you want to upgrade. I'd stop there, but otherwise, you could go up to E4 if you want the AoE upgrades, or E6 if you're looking to all in on the guy. This guy's my favorite character in the game. No questions asked. He's right up there with Mighty. I mean, shoot, dude. Not only is this one of the most handsome men in the entire Hoyoverse, but he's absolutely adorable to boot too. Also, I thought that I was a big Mighty simp, but this guy ranks #1 on the Mighty fan tier list, that's for sure. I love him to bits, and I hope you end up enjoying him just as much as I do. He's utterly beautiful, man. I'm a huge Phainon simp, I've got nothing to deny. I mean, shoot dude, just look at him. He is freaking beautiful. Hopefully this video was able to get your gorgeous Phainon eliminating enemies with his radiant strength and beauty. This has been Juice, signing out, and it's hard to think that this guy is a big, scary, godlike being when he makes cute faces like this. Like, come on, dude. This is the most adorable nuclear bomb that's ever lived.